There are a few characters as highly anticipated in Genshin Impact as the Fatui Harbingers, and with the release of 6. of Lunar 8, the 7th Harbinger, the Marionette Sandrone, is finally playable. Fittingly, Sandrone also released nearly 2 years to the date of my first video, and first solo challenge with her fellow Harbinger Alakino. Not to mention, in a few short weeks we will begin our journey to Snezhnaya, the home of the Fatui. So what better way to commemorate that occasion than to continue the tradition of a solo run with every Harbinger?
I hate self-introductions. If you're supposed to know me, you'll get to know me naturally, and if you're not, why waste the time and energy? But, very well. For the sake of etiquette, I'll humor you just this once. Behold, before you stands Marionette, 7th of the Fatui Harbingers.
The rules for this challenge are the same as always. I can only use Sandrone, but I can use other characters if necessary to move forward the Archon quest. All claymores are allowed, but if I get her signature weapon, I can't use it until after Inazuma. Additionally, I cannot play in co-op. Otherwise, anything goes. Now, let's see if we can beat Genshin Impact only using Sandrone. Well, this can't be correct. Now, despite the fact that I have never objected to using Amber in her domain for the Pyro Monument, I wanted to see how far we could get with Sandrone. After all, she has probably one of the best movement abilities since Mueko or Veressa, but that also meant attempting to get to the top of the domain, which has never come easy for me. Anyways, with all of that said, we did successfully skip Amber's domain, did Kaio's domain as intended, and skipped Lisa's domain easily to complete Act 1, meaning we have to get to AR10 to start Act 2. And what better way to level up quickly than getting our Adventurer Handbook, meaning it's time to go see our very own creation, Catherine. When did we find out that Catherine was created by Sandrone? I know it was a long-running suspicion, but was it confirmed prior to the Nodcry Archon quest? I ask because I genuinely don't remember. While I am a lore enjoyer, it's been way too long of playing this game to remember when specific lore drops occurred. It's just a part of my knowledge that, yeah, Catherine was created by Sandrone. You know, the book missions almost immediately get us to AR9, so after some cooking and treasure hunting, we reach AR10 and can start Act 2. Technically speaking, since Sandrone is still an active Harbinger, is this actually stealing the Holy Lyre back, or is this just a roundabout way of obtaining it while also directing the blame away from the Traveler and crew? Though, did the Fatui get blamed by the Knights at all for this? Anyways, if you watched my last solo challenge, which was Nicole Part 1, you heard me say that I was probably not going to speedrun solo challenges like I did with Columbina, and any solo runs that would release as the full challenge would probably be characters like Albedo or Chiori. Well, unfortunately, I realized something while trying to record Skirk Part 2. When a character has a very distinct playstyle, if I bench the challenge for too long, I completely forget how that playstyle works, and struggle my way through Part 2. It was clear almost immediately that Sandrone has a very distinct playstyle, and splitting the challenge in two would be a disservice to myself in the challenge run, while also being incredibly irritating to watch. So I'll add an asterisk to the Part 1 versus full challenge decision that if a character has a distinct playstyle that I might forget between parts, I'll just do a full challenge run. Sure, I could still record the entire challenge in one go and split into 2 videos, but that's just a lot more work. Also, I had a ton of fun with Sandrone. This is without a doubt the most fun solo run I've done. I truly feel like it reignited my enjoyment of these challenges, which is also why this video is coming out before Mualani. With Act 2 complete, we have to grind to AR18, making it the perfect time to go over the pros and cons of Sandrone, both in general and from a solo challenge perspective. First, the pros. Like I said, she ended up being the best solo run I've done. I can honestly only think of like 2 cons. She was so great that I made immediate efforts to C0R1 her on my main account, build her, and build a team around her. I truly went from no decent cryo DPSs on my main account to my 2 primary teams being built around cryo characters, and building Chi-Chi. Crazy. But this is not about my main account. One of the biggest pros I found with this solo run was that Sandrone virtually has no cooldown as long as you play her correctly. Her primary damage method is her charged attack, but after a certain amount of time, Fagio overheats, resulting in a significantly slower attack time. In Razor terms, you can basically consider the heat monitor like a timer. Using Sandrone's skill refreshes the heat monitor for Fagio, which refreshes the timer on said charged attack. Even if you are constantly using her charged attack, her skill's cooldown is still shorter than the time it takes to overheat. It's a bit of a learning curve, at least it was for me, but once I got the hang of it, I was shocked by how convenient it is. You're also able to move around during her charged attack, making dodging significantly easier as well. Similar to how Columbina automatically converts any Dendro or Geo damage into its equivalent lunar damage, Sandrone does the same with Stellar Conduct. This is exclusively seen when fighting Electro Slimes, Abyss Mages, and Abyss Lectors, but it definitely boosts the damage even as a solo challenge. I've already mentioned Sandrone's movement abilities, but it makes a massive difference throughout this challenge. I enjoyed Mizuki's hovering sprint during her solo run, but this pretty much took every complaint I had about that and corrected it. She's super fast going upstairs, she can freely glide off heights, and she has an extra ability going over water that I'll show more during Inazuma, mostly because I didn't actually discover it until that point. Truly an absolute queen for exploration, especially when you have no stamina at the beginning of the game. This is a very niche pro, but when you complete your daily commissions with Sandrone on your team, you get a bonus healing tea alongside your other rewards. Catherine also has a new dialogue exclusively for Sandrone. I just think this is a very cute addition. Also, I don't care what anyone says, I love Sandrone's new design. She was beautiful before, she's beautiful now. Sandrone is also a Claymore character, so the few cryo-shielded enemies that we face have very little fight to them because her Claymore can cut through the shield. I'd take this over the Eye of Perception literally any day, though that doesn't say much, I suppose. Sandrone scales on attack, making her relatively straightforward to build. She also doesn't need to worry much about energy recharge because, admittedly, her burst is kind of a DPS loss, at least in a solo run. Just throw attack percentage artifacts on her and she's good to go. In a team setting, Stellar Conduct will trigger so long as you have Sandrone in your team, and the damage boost from Stellar Conduct is absolutely insane. For most of these solo runs, I don't get much use of the character on my main account because up until recently, my main account was incredibly neglected, but with Sandrone, Yaimiko, and Chi-Chi at level 80, I was able to 8-star floor 12. I blame Magu Kenki for not being able to 9-star it, but that's neither here nor there. Admittedly, I feel like I'm starting to get a little spoiled by my last two solo runs, because just like Nicole, Sandrone's boss is no issue. Her boss not only is in Mondstadt, making it easy to access, but there was no struggle to deal with her boss throughout the challenge, which is partially what encouraged me to go all the way to Natlan. Unfortunately, nobody is perfect, and Sandrone surprisingly does have a couple of cons. Her primary con, the sub-detection unit. Oh my god, farming these stupid bugs makes me want to... Sorry about that. Anyways, this is probably one of the worst materials to farm outside of, well, Inazuma characters. I had to farm them on my main account and on this account, and I honestly started to understand why people pay pilots to farm. It was not a good time. I guess if anything, outside of a solo run, Sandrone really needs specific teammates to be at her best, since Stellar Conduct is really her primary damage dealer. But to be fair, 2 of those teammates are standard characters, and another 2 are 4 stars, so it could be worse. Other than that, I'm gonna be so real, I can't think of other cons. This was such a good solo run. Spoiler alert, but there are only like 3 things in the entire challenge that she can't do. Now, you might be counting in your head the typical can't do's and thinking, well, that's not right. Just wait and see. After more book missions and mindless exploration I could probably do in my sleep at this point, we finally reach AR-18, meaning it's time to return to Dawn Winery to start Act 3.
I can't see the end of the horizon! Hatsune Miku!
So something I'm trying to figure out is my timeline for solo runs, because honestly, I realized that including Odette, a vast majority of my solo runs have ended up being cryo or hydro, which I mean is great for, you know, Snezhnaya coming out soon, but I feel like that's just really repetitive. So while Risley and Nouvelette and Lowen and maybe Sealali will eventually happen, I'll probably prioritize characters with other elements first. It also depends how quickly I get this edited to see if I've truly mastered the art of producing these challenges in a short time frame. Besides Albedo and Chiori, who are already being worked on, I also want to do solo runs with Eat Lua and Alosha once he releases, but that's a few weeks down the road. Now that we're facing Dvalin, it's time for another edition of What's Ren Watching, and it's still FBI. I actually binged almost the entire series while recording this video. I'm currently at like episode 6 of season 8, which is the newest season. Tragic. Truly. I have no idea what I'll watch after. Honestly, I might just rewatch it, because I'd love to binge FBI International, but unfortunately, it's not on the same streaming platform, so if I don't rewatch it, I'll probably just take the loss and find something else. Beyond that, it's a new anime season, but I haven't actually looked all that hard into what's airing right now. I saved a couple of series that I saw on Crunchyroll, but I might let them marinate for a few more episodes before starting them. At least Reincarnated as a Slime is currently airing. With Dvalin defeated, it's time for us to enjoy our celebration feast with Amber. Try to, at least. Anyways, after whatever that was, we complete Act 3, marking the end of the Mondstadt Archon quest. The teleport waypoint outside of Windrest Peak unlocks with the completion of Mondstadt, so the first order of business is beating up Sandrone's boss. Actually, I go and see the boy first, but then we can go beat up the boss. Priorities, you know? Well, that was a nice timing for AR-20. Now, you might be thinking, Ren, you said you were going to upload weekly, but you haven't uploaded in over 2 weeks, and it was just a side video. And to that I say, Yeah. Admittedly, I had plans for frequent uploads and I recorded footage for all of that, but unfortunately, I got sick, per usual, and then I ended up locking in for my trip to Boston. It was only a short trip, but I wanted to avoid catching a plague from leaving my house, or the lettuce parasite, so I had to be mindful of preparing. In Boston, I got to see NoahCon front row at Fenway Park with media, and oh my goodness, it was the best experience ever. I think the only thing that will ever top that is probably like hitting 100,000 subscribers, or even a million. It was incredible, the concert was so much fun. It's been like 2-ish weeks since then, and I still haven't come down with anything yet, so fingers crossed I dodged getting sick. Again. I cleared the boss a few times, enough to ascend her at AR 25, but I'll probably do most of the fights here after I ascend Sandrone before the Ascension Domain. Work smarter, not harder. You know, for now, I ended up heading into the Spiral Abyss to complete the book missions before completing Kaya's story quest, since that is a thing I can do on this account. It's probably the least annoying story quest of early games, so I gotta take the experience where I can get it. After Kaya's story quest, I went to finish Ambers, which was a walk in the park with Sandrone. Sandrone could have absolutely reached the hilly trail over the water and opened the gate the normal way, but honestly, when we have the chance to see the Genshin back rooms, it's far more entertaining to do that. Sandrone is also one of the few solo challenge characters that is fully capable of defeating all the Hoyocreators on the platforms, so shout out to Fagio and the long-range attack. Truly the MVP of the challenge. While we had no issues with Amber's story quest, I have a sinking feeling that Razor's story quest won't be as easy. The good news is at least as a Claymore, her physical damage packs more of a punch than, say, Lawon with his polearm, or the Eye of Perception. Yeah, the bar is incredibly low, I know.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
With one rank left before Liyue, the handbook comes in handy. Get it? Because never mind. And I was able to farm for the debate club and get a bonus 400 experience. Honestly, the best part of speedrunning these challenges in the first week is having the domains being fully open. Incredible, truly. And at least the debate club uses the Liyue domain drops. After tracking down a ruin hunter and doing a little bit more exploration, we hit AR 23, so it's time to start Liyue. Wow, the first Harbinger versus the newest Harbinger. Man. Child needs a model upgrade so bad. So I feel like I've touched on this in the past, and if you're a regular viewer of my channel, you might have also put it together, but I don't leave the house much. I'm chronically ill, which among other things prevents me from driving, and as an American, walkable cities are a myth, so I predominantly order groceries as if it's still active COVID lockdown or something. But with frequent online ordering, sometimes orders are mixed up. It happens, no big deal. I'm honestly thankful regardless that someone is doing my grocery shopping for me. You know, however, while I was working on this video, I had probably the most humbling experience to date. So I made a small order of things I ran out of between my regular shopping. Bread, butter, basic things. When it arrives, I'm looking in the bag, and immediately I realize, this isn't correct. There's 3 items that are mine, along with frozen mini quiches, mint chocolate Klondike bars, for the record, I hate mint chocolate, and a bakery pack of mini cinnamon rolls. Should I have texted the Dasher immediately and been like, hey, I got the wrong stuff? Yeah, probably, but I'm not gonna lie to you, those cinnamon rolls were kinda speaking to me. And anyways, I was always under the impression that once the food is delivered, it's food safety 101 to just refund it and not exchange. I've also never had a Dasher come back and exchange the items. So I opened the cinnamon rolls. Now wait, I can sense you judging, leave me alone. I figured if I'm not getting my bread, I might as well enjoy these. And it'd been a good 10 minutes since the order was delivered, so I figured they weren't coming back. Then I hear a knock at my door. Oh my goodness, you guys. I was so mortified. I was like, yeah, I still have the bag. And I gave back the frozen items, and then they asked me if I got cinnamon rolls too. I lied and told them no. But I suggested the grocery store service desk would let them go and grab it if they said it wasn't in their bags, because I worked at the same store before, and I know how they are with their policies. Besides, it's the chain. It's not like you're stealing from a mom and pop shop. Anyways, just in case, I also added extra to my original tip and gave 5 stars. I will probably be plagued by guilt for the rest of my life, but at least it makes a funny story. If for some reason the daughter who was dashing with her mom is a viewer of mine, I'm so sorry for lying and please don't dox me. Moving on. With Act 1 wrapped up, it's time to work to AR 25 for Act 2. And what better way to level up than with the ley lines? I needed to beat 10 of them for the handbook missions anyways, so it's a 2-for-1 special. And it got us to AR 24. Wait, what do you mean I'm too tall to get under that? How was I supposed to get this chest otherwise? I can't believe I can just condense resin at AR 24 and skip down hunting daily commissions. All that's left is updating the new sort of skip buttons to be usable in earlier quests. Luckily, with our kind of daily commissions, we hit AR 25, meaning it's time to ascend then Sandrone and the Debate Club. While Catalyst challenges all end up being Eye of Perception Impact, Claymore challenges have kind of become Debate Club Impact, I think. After making a detour to Nodcry to level up Sandrone's talents, we return to Liyue and begin Act 2. I saw a tweet saying you can bully Child out of his seat here, but I'm realizing now it was likely in co-op and just a co-op glitch. I unfortunately was unable to do it alone, but I did end up standing on the back of his seat, which is hilarious in its own way. Act 2 does not provide us much in this game, but it does introduce us to one of the 3 can't-dos for Sandrone in this challenge. Unfortunately, even when Fagio overheats, it's still not enough to heat the pot. At least we have Amber. I still cannot believe that Sandrone single-handedly put Chi-Chi above Skirk in usage ranks and character ranking. I also can't believe that Sandrone got me to feel thankful that I have a C6 Chi-Chi on my main account. I guess you never know what'll secretly turn into a new Bitcoin. With Act 2 complete, it's time to work towards AR28. Despite Sandrone's boss not really putting up much of a challenge, I still decided it would make life easier if I farmed it before the Ascension domain, because, well, I won't get this chance again until AR35, and why would I make things intentionally harder for myself? There's even limits to my self-inflicted suffering. You know, I'm not sure what's funnier, the fact you can have a tea party with Scaramouche before completing a story quest, or the idea of getting Scaramouche's entire storyline spoiled before ever stepping foot in the Delusion Factory. Though I suppose you could probably get it spoiled by opening up the character archive, so... Anyways, after collecting enough boss drops to last until AR35, and doing some exploration in Dragonspine, I finally decided to head to the Ascension domain. That said, I've shown the Ascension domain in every single video, so we'll skip it in this one. The Ascension domain only brought us halfway to AR27, so it's time to lock in and grind your talent book domain, because there's nothing worse than being at the point of needing to ascend talents and having it not be the right day. I also ended up clearing the one-off domains in a way only Sandrone can, which alongside starting D-Luke Story Quest brought us to AR28. Starting Act 3, getting to the platform took a bit of trial and error, but where there's a will, there's a way, and Sandrone continued her streak of being built different by making it without needing help from an Animo character. What an icon. Honestly, I was wholeheartedly expecting to struggle against the 3 cryo flowers, because it would not be the first time, but Sandrone's ability to stay away from enemies definitely made a huge difference. Plus it helps that they, aren't immune to cryo. That would have been unfortunate.
Oh, another pain in the... well, everything. He could happily just spend his days with his brothers and sisters. Why insist on becoming a Harbinger at all? And when will he get it into his thick skull that not everyone is always looking for a fight?
With Child defeated, it's time for the defensive Liyue. Lucky for us,
Cryo is always far more effective in the rain.
I mentioned earlier I went to a Noah Khan concert, and oh man, it was phenomenal. But the crazy thing was, the entire experience was very out of character. Let me explain. So, Midya and I both suffer from chronic bad luck. Basically, if it can go wrong, it will. We've just kind of gotten used to working around that, but for this concert, everything went weirdly well. It started with getting tickets. Both us, alongside Violet, who doesn't even listen to Noah Khan but wanted to help, failed miserably at getting tickets initially. I have permanent beef with the MLB website after Noah Khan's Stick Season tour and failing to get tickets to that, so this was just kind of par for the course. Ironically, it even made me miss Ticketmaster queuing, because at least Ticketmaster tells you how many people are ahead of you in line. While sitting in the queue of doom and despair, I went on Twitter to see if anyone was getting through, only to see a tweet from the venue saying another show had been added and ticketing would be open in like 10 minutes at the start of the hour. Okay, I can do this. After 10 minutes of continued doom and despair, I moved into the queue for the new date and got in nearly immediately. Midya, however, got in right before I did and snagged a pair of GA tickets. We were victorious, so I closed out of my queue and then her card declined. Mind you, this specific card has been our go-to for pretty much every large purchase within the friend group, the sisterhood of the traveling Capital One card, if you will. It has never declined during concert ticketing, and it wasn't even one of those confirm if this was legit and try again. It just declined. Panicked, I decided to go back into the queue and see if it would let me skip the line, and surprisingly, it did, and I see Front Porch lit up on the map. For NoCon, the show had 3 general admission pits, GA left and GA right, which are exactly what they sound like, as well as Front Porch, which was a pit in the middle of the stage itself with a catwalk built around it. Front Porch was incredibly limited, and considering Fenway Park was the most difficult city to get tickets to, it wasn't even an option we considered, but there it was, sitting in my cart. Typically, I'm not the one who buys tickets for the friend group because my ability to keep a large sum of money in my bank account is about equal to my ability to play Genshin Impact.
Not bad. Not bad, but not good.
But for some reason, I had the money to cover both my ticket and Midia's ticket, so I just panic put my card in, and it worked. We had won the ticketing war, and came out of it with the best tickets in the entire venue. Now we had to wait several months for the show itself. Speaking of good luck, honestly, this might be the best we've done at the defensive Liyue in any of the challenges. None of the ballistas fell under 50. What a win. Now that Liyue is complete, it's time to return to Mondstadt to begin the Dainsleif quests. And if there's anything we know about the Dane quests, it's that he, without fail, always throws a wrench into a great solo run. The first Dainsleif quest isn't a problem because the single Cryo Abyss Mage doesn't actually need to be fought, and the rest of the enemies are either Pyro or Hydro. However, We Will Be Reunited unfortunately compensates for the lack of Cryo enemies prior to this by having an unholy amount of Cryo Abyss Mages in a single quest. The good news is at least the debate club can break through the shields relatively easily, but leave it to Dainsleif to rain on our parade. Side note, while I was working on this script, the World Cup final was actively going on, and I gotta ask, is it always so much showmanship, or is that just because of America hosting the final game? I've never watched the World Cup in the past because the time zones never had a reason to favor US viewers, but it was really fun watching all the fans visiting, and honestly, it might have been the closest we've ever come to world peace. But yeah, before the game itself even started, there was just an obscene amount of, well, everything but the game itself. I guess it makes sense because it's only every 4 years, but honestly, I feel the same way about the Super Bowl because I just want to watch the game. I don't care about everything else leading up to it. Just start the clock, play your game. Wow, I'm so looking forward to football season. American football season, sorry. Finishing We Will Be Reunited brought us pretty close to AR30, and thankfully, after using up every last bit of resin we have, a little bit of exploration is all we needed to hit. Wait, seriously? 5? Okay, let me go find a chest or something. You know, this is definitely the 3rd or 4th time this specific chest has been used to hit an important venture rank throughout my challenges, which isn't a lot, but it's weird. Right? Regardless, now that we're at AR30, we can ascend Sandrone and her weapon before returning to Liyue to start the Inazuma prologue quest. This was actually the time that I finally learned about Sandrone's infinite water travel. For a few seconds after her skill ends while over water, you can reactivate it without falling in. Kaya and Farina, your competition has arrived. The prologue quest isn't exactly much to write home about. We fight some slimes, some treasure hoarders, and then we fight the weakest enemy of the entire Archon quest line, Thay the Flyer, and all of his 12 HP glory. Unfortunately, I don't think even having a vision would have saved you. With the prologue complete, it's time to talk to Catherine and head to Inazuma. I must say, one of the highlights of doing full challenge runs in a single video means I can spend far less time re-narrating the same parts of the Archon quest. There's only so many ways I can explain how the quest goes. Wow, I love when enemies just respawn. That's so cool. Oh hey, it's the other character that went from barely used to a must build. You're welcome, Yaimiko. Okay, now you might be thinking, Ren, you told us about ticketing for NoahCon, but you didn't actually tell us about the concert. And don't you worry your little head. I was just waiting for a long combat segment. So we had our tickets, we waited several months, and now the concert week was finally upon us. The first sign of good luck was the weather itself. A few years ago, Midia and I visited Boston for a Hosier concert at Fenway Park, and it was in the middle of a record-breaking heat wave. I genuinely melted, not even exaggerating. Midia thought she was going to need to bring me to a hospital after the concert. It was bad. So bad that I had to go home instead of joining Midia and Violet in Chicago to see Stray Kids in VIP. Yeah. So we were both incredibly worried about how the weather would be for NoahCon. Our concert fell on the perfect weather day. It had torrentially downpoured the day before, and the other 2 dates for this venue, it was super hot out, but for us, I could not have planned a more beautiful day if I tried. Since Midia is staying outside of the actual city of Boston, we ended up just choosing to take the commuter rail, which would drop us outside of Fenway Park. The only problem was that we had no idea how parking worked. It took us so long to find the parking that we fully expected that we had missed our train and would have to wait an hour. Oh well, we were still going to get to Fenway before doors opened anyways. Maybe we would just find food near the station instead of at the park. The train somehow ended up delayed enough for us to make it. Once we got to the city, our next mission was to find food, and then try to get the limited Red Sox collab hat. I am a Red Sox fan, for better and worse, so this was especially important to me. Unfortunately, everyone else wanted the hats too, and there were only like 40 hats per merch stand per night. There was a merch stand opening up at 4 p.m. near our gate, so we decided to kill the hour by getting food. Food was great. I had a salad that miraculously did not give me the lettuce parasite currently plaguing the country, and then we went to find the merch stand. The line was around the block. There was no chance. Oh well, our luck can't last forever, right? After an hour of sitting in a shaded line, we get into the venue, and I notice a merch stand with a very short short line, and fans leaving with the Red Sox hat. I dash over to get us in line, and we pray. Midya and I got the last 2 hats. I could have cried. I was so happy. Riding the high of our hats, we walked to our pit and saw there was still space on the front barricade. We were officially barricaded for Noah-Con. With Act 1 done, it's time to go make some pizza for Ayaka. Okay, I'm used to not having cheese for this, but what do you mean I don't have any mushrooms? I don't think that's ever happened to me. You know, this would be a great time to be able to access the one area of the moon with all of those mushrooms. Wow, that might be an original sentence. Well, anyways, with the pizza and Ayaka's story quest done, it's time to go garden for this old couple and wrap up Yoimiya's story quest as well. Starting Act 2, I am still dedicated to wasting unnecessary time and seeing which characters can outlast the Vision Hunt decree. Do I gain anything doing this? No, not in the slightest. Is it entertaining? Immensely. So here's something exciting. We recently celebrated the 1-year anniversary of my Discord server. Admittedly, I haven't been as active as I'd like to be within the server, but I'm trying to heavily prioritize making YouTube content, so hopefully once this video is done, I'll actually be able to, make an appearance in the server more often. It's crazy to think that in just 1 year, we've ended up with over 1,600 members in the server. I am so thankful to everyone who's joined the server, and to my team of mods and admins who have taken the reins to keep the server functional without me around. I'm definitely going to work on being more active and involved in the server, as well as trying to see if we can host more community-related events in there in the future. So, look forward to that. Sandrone, basically a catalyst, but better when it counts for solo runs. Now that we have to travel to a new island, it's the perfect time to show off Sandrone's beautiful infinite water gliding. If only I had this for Nicole only. After rescuing Tepe so we can serve as a test subject for the Fatui's plans, we convince Goro that we're definitely trustworthy and break into the ranks of the resistance. Playing both sides is definitely a Fatui tactic, one we know all too well. If you're a regular watcher of my content or other solo run challenges, you might still be confused by the fact that I mentioned Sandrone only has 3 can't do's in the entire challenge. Typically, the bare minimum is 4, right? The cooking pot in Liyue, the bonfire in Sumeru, the electro monuments in Inazuma Act 3, and the archery demonstration. Wondering which one Sandrone can do? Well, it's time to show my proudest accomplishment, the bow-free archery demonstration. When Fagio overheats, the ice beam converts to single interval shots, which is perfect for the archery demonstration. Admittedly, I would have had a significantly faster time if I used Amber here, but I was determined to see if it was even possible at first, and once I realized it was possible, I was even more determined to succeed. Unfortunately, the lightning was my #1 op during the entire section of this quest. For my own mental health, I chose not to count how many times I failed. However, after sitting up, turning off my FBI episode, and locking in true gamer fashion, I was ready for victory. Easy victory, as always. Anyways, after another example of
Cryo is always far more effective in the rain.
we complete Act 2. Oh, that's cute. You think I'm gonna use the Wave Rider? Nah.
I'm fucking no border. You can call me Harry Potter.
Honestly, it's kind of hilarious to me that we got into the ranks of the Resistance by Goro just taking our word about standing up to the Raiden Shogun. Kokomi immediately promotes us to a captain, but these 2 guys refuse to actually accept it unless we beat up some enemies in front of them. Like, okay, sure, who cares what the General and High Priestess think of us? We need to prove ourselves to NPC 1 and 2. Unfortunately, after proving our worth and participating in an off-screen training montage, Act 3 provides us with #2 of Sandrone's 3 can't do's. Even though she procs Stellar Conduct does not do electro damage, nor does it, generate electro from thin air, even if the air is full of lightning. All electro is lightning, but apparently not all lightning is electro, or something like that. I don't know, I dropped out of college. Something beautiful about Sandrone, well, besides, her, is the fact that Claymore and Cryo is a god-tier combo against the Fatui agents. To be fair, she wouldn't be much of a Harbinger if she wasn't stronger than her subordinates, but after past experiences in solo runs, this was incredibly refreshing. Sandrone's Ice Beam alone packs a serious punch, and most of the agents didn't even get a chance to activate their shields. For the ones that did, Cryo melts the Pyro shield, freezes the Hydro shield, and despite Rock being weak to ice in Pokemon, shatters the Geo shield. I don't really account the Anemo Fatui for, well, anything, because it's basically the weakest link of the Fatui, so we won't go over that. The best Fatui agent to face with Sandrone, though, is without a doubt the Electro agent, because once the shield goes up, it triggers Stellar Conduct. And once Stellar Conduct is active,
Wrap it up. Exit that way. Thank you.
She always lived for herself. She loved in her own way, and hated in her own way too. No wonder she burned out so fast. Still, Her flame shone with a unique hue until the moment it flickered into nothing.
I'm bound for Fontaine after this, and Rosaline's heading to Mondstadt and Inazuma.
Huh. For Her Majesty's plan. You really think she can pull it off, then?
There are aspects of her vision that I share. That's enough for me. And you, Sandrone? Do you have a wish for the future?
A wish? Arlecchino? What's wrong?
Rosaline is dead.
Oh. Was it worth it? Paying the ultimate price? Just to fulfill someone else's wish? What did it all amount to? A few snide remarks at a shallow funeral? Utterly risible.
The duties of the Fatui only paused for half a day for Signora's funeral, and as the saying goes, there's no rest for the weary. So back to the plane of Euthymia to erase all of Signora's efforts and end the Vision Hunt decree. Just like our first fight with A, we timed out the first phase. So after our best teammate arrives to assist, we make easy work on phase 2, wrapping up the Inazuma Archon quest. While the Chasm quest is usually one I dread in these solo runs, Sandrone is about to be a breath of fresh air. Sure, there are 2 Cryo Abyss mages, but as we saw during We'll Be Reunited, they aren't really much of a struggle against the Claymore. Shout out to our buddy Debate Club, I guess. More importantly, while we already knew Sandrone makes quick work of the Hydro Abyss Heralds, nothing could have prepared us for putting her up against an Abyss Lector. Honestly, at this point, I was absolutely secure in my resolve to finish this solo run in one go. Entirely because I wanted to see Sandrone versus the nightmare fuel that is a space and time for you. I need to get justice for, well, myself, and the countless struggles I've faced in past solo runs, and will probably face going forward. Stellar Conduct isn't just a one-time bonus against Abyss Lectors, though. It's also triggered while fighting Electro Abyss Mages, so at least we get a damage boost for the approximately 5 seconds that the Abyss Mages last against Fagio. Obviously, the Cryo Abyss Mages weren't exactly a fun time, but after all the Catalyst challenges, and Polearm challenges, I can't even be mad at this. Columbina truly transformed my patience for these challenges. Finishing the Chasm quest nearly puts us to AR35, meaning it was time to utilize the Debate Club and do what I haven't actually taken the effort to do in other solo runs, beat up the cubes for the book missions. Admittedly, I only speedran this because I knew I was leaving for Boston and I wanted to try to get done as much as I could before I left, because if my longer Korea trip was anything to go on, I'd never actually do any work when I'm on vacation mode. Oops. Thanks to the book missions, we reach AR35 pretty quickly, and after ascending Sandrone, it's time to start Sumeru. Despite Sandrone's charge attack being a little different than most characters, it didn't cause any issues with cleaning the Withering Zone. If anything, it actually made this one significantly easier since the enemies were all in the water. So as we all know, Sumeru Act 1 doesn't really have a lot going on for it in terms of things to show for a solo run. Actually, that's a pretty common feature for all of the nations after Inazuma, which I guess is good for writing these scripts? I don't know, I guess it depends if you prefer videos under an hour that exclusively focus on the challenge itself, or if you enjoy my videos as if I'm hosting a podcast while gaming in the background. But honestly, if you want to hear me talk about the character and challenge itself in any level of detail, no you don't. I will without fail glaze every character because I genuinely enjoy them, and being a hater is too much energy. I have rapidly learned that not thinking about things you hate makes you much happier overall.
When you're feeling unhappy, don't think, don't think. When you're feeling kind of sad, don't think, don't think. Cause there's no point thinking about the things that you're thinking about, the things that you're thinking about, and make a thing and rough. And that's how Sana stays so happy.
If that makes me a Hoyo glazer, well, there are worse things to be called, I suppose. But yeah, overall, yes, this game has plenty of problems. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you saying Genshin is perfect and can do no wrong, because we both know that's not true. But I feel like personally, if I didn't like Genshin anymore, I'd just stop playing it. I don't believe in the whole sunk cost fallacy thing for gacha games because your time is the most important valuable resource of all. And investing any time in something you hate that isn't, you know, a necessity for living is a waste. And yes, this entire rant is inspired by a certain soapbox video essay rant that got dunked on a lot already on Twitter and TikTok. I know, shockingly, something actually united Genshin TikTok and Genshin Twitter, at least for a short while. Anyways, that rant got us through the primary fight section of this entire act, so after running into our creation outside of her designated location and engaging in some on-the-spot maintenance, we beat up some guys for Alhaitham and finish Act 1. Yep, that's entirely how this quest went. No, I definitely don't know Adori. Moving into Act 2, you already know the drill. Walking, thinking, something about the number 4, more walking, a whole lot more thinking, and the greatest reward of all, Nilou's cutscene. Well, obviously our in-the-field maintenance wasn't good enough. This must be a malfunction in Catherine. I guess it's time to replace it. And yes, I did skip Dotori's introduction because, well...
You might want to cover your ears. I'm afraid I won't be able to control my emotions.
Making our way into the desert, we find out the Electro Rift Hounds do not trigger stellar conduct, even though they apply Electro if they touch us. And Electro Crystallize does trigger. Wow, Sandrone is truly unplayable. Hoyo, I demand apologems. Immediately. Speaking of apologems, do you think they'll try to patch Sandrone's infinite water hovering, and then pull a Nouvellette and undo the patch, while also giving us this free 10 pull? Considering the anniversary's coming up soon, that would be very appreciated with the Snezhnaya characters. Well, regardless, thanks to completing Act 3, we do get our free single pull from the handbook, and the other ones that I forgot to claim. I wonder if we'll get lucky on Weapons Banner. Now you might be thinking, wow, Ren, that's perfect, what a lucky break. Sure, it's not her signature, but it's a 5-star Claymore. And to that, I say just 2 words. Cecilia Garden. So Debate Club, you remain our GOAT, and we'll see if we can get her signature before the end of this challenge. Moving into Act 4, it's time to visit the abandoned hospital. Obviously, I spoke way too soon when it came to Sandrone's charged attack because, for some reason, it just decided to work half the time during this specific section of the Archon quest. Well, at least I can get this What? Wow, I didn't even know this was here. If that's Sandrone's only death in this entire challenge, I am going to lose my marbles. After coming to terms with one of, if not the most embarrassing death to date in my solo runs, Sandrone's charged attack decides to properly function. So at least now we can go take the long walk to clear our heads. Honestly, yes, I always complain about this section of the Archon quest, and that without a doubt is never going to change, but at least Sandrone makes it significantly easier. If there was a tier higher than SS, Sandrone would get it for her travel boost alone. A few videos back, I announced that I'll be having a segment in my videos called the Wheel of Yap. You guys can submit topics or Genshin confessions or whatever you want me to talk about. I'll spin a wheel and answer whatever number it lands on. I'm gonna do 2 of the Yap wheel today. So first one is number 4. First of all, love your vids. Now my questions. Any plans on redoing any challenges in the future? If not, is there anything you wish you had done differently in a past challenge? First of all, thank you. But to answer your question, I don't think I'd redo any challenges in the future. Well, besides Kaniche because I have to. Maybe Arlecchino if anyone. But in terms of things I wish I did differently, honestly, I wish that I got myself into the habit of making videos in one singular part earlier. And that I had been less trigger happy with starting new challenges because now I have a bunch of half-finished challenges. Luckily, I've gotten significantly faster at writing scripts, editing videos, and even with playing through the challenges as a whole. And I think I will eventually be able to get through older challenges. However, with Snezhnaya starting soon and with how long Nodcry is, I will probably continue to do split challenges mixed in with full challenges like this, but only if I do actually include Nodcry in part 2. Maybe I'll do that with Durin, actually. The good news, though, is that with Sandrone finished in one video, I'll be able to speedrun part 2s prior to Snezhnaya. And since there are definitely plenty of characters I want to do runs with for Snezhnaya, it's better to get past obligations wrapped up sooner than later. With Act 4 done and dusted, get it? Because we're in the desert, and the desert is... never mind, let's just start Act 5. This might be the first time I've done this section and not taken any damage. Sandrone is just that girl. What can I say? Like I mentioned earlier, the Electro Fatui are actually the best to face. Well, besides the Hydra ones, I guess. Because it immediately triggers stellar conduct. We don't get to see Sandrone's best abilities very often in this challenge, so we have to enjoy it when we can. However, completely irrelevant to Sandrone, I also accomplished something incredible. I got the connection to Nahida on the first try. Only took an unholy amount of Archon Quest replays. Returning to the app wheel, we have number 6. Oh, this one's a confession. Genshin confession. I recently came back from quitting Genshin and made a new account to start fresh because I completely forgot how to play. Relatable. I forgot how the game worked completely and what characters to use, and a friend of mine told me to build Dahlia as a main DPS. Wow, your friend either is messing with you or is that McDahlia's person and just absolute Dahlia shooter. I only recently realized how stupid that idea was, and I've made it to AR 35 with him as my main damage dealer. Why? I don't know. He also had a 1-star weapon. I forgot that you have to to change weapons after pulling the character. My account is pretty much cooked, all the enemies are too strong for me, and I don't know how to build new characters now as I can't defeat anyone's boss for their material. That is rough, oh my. I am a firm believer that you can make anyone a DPS, but I also know that AR-35 and AR-40 both are super difficult to work around if you don't have proper builds. I think the best thing you can do is lower the world level if possible. I don't remember what rank you have to be before you can lower it, but I think you should be there. Try to cushion Dahlia's talents as much as possible, and maybe start with building simpler characters. Barbara is free and can be a decent healer to start so you can avoid dying, and combined with Dahlia's shield can maybe make it easier to fight bosses. Maybe not the Oceanid though, but you don't necessarily need to level Barbara past 40 immediately anyways. Luckily, with the training guide, you can pick some characters to work on building and see who might be the easiest to build for the most return on investment. Also, not to plug my Discord server, but we do have a Genshin help section where you can actually ask for help from other players on builds or help with farming. There's no shame in using co-op to help move you along. Also, definitely don't ascend the world level until you feel comfortable or you feel like the enemies are too easy. I feel like by making speedrun challenges the way I do, it makes it seem like you have to ascend as fast as possible, but that's not true for the average player at all. One of my best friends, Violet, didn't ascend past AR-35 until she had enough experience to get to like AR-45. And even for my main account, I don't think I ascended until way later than I had to because I just didn't want to struggle. You know what I mean? Hopefully that can help a little, and honestly, I'd love to see it if you can keep Dahlia as your main DPS because truly, that's iconic. Sandrone continues her streak of doing better than most solo runs by being able to, you know, do anything against Scar Robot's Nirvana engines, letting us avoid sacrificing Nahida and giving us a satisfying conclusion to the fight. If only Sandrone had voice lines about Scaramouche. What a shame. After an enjoyable stellar conduct fight with the Electro Law Churl, we complete Act 5, marking the end of Sumeru. This also means it's time to begin Caribert, and more importantly, we've reached the third and final can't do for Sandrone. Unfortunately, robots are banned from lighting fires in Teyvat, which I guess makes sense since Sandrone already overheats enough to justify breathing. How did I manage to miss that? Well anyways, after side questing so hard we become a mushroom farmer, it's finally time for a proper domain. Unfortunately, Caribert introduces us to probably the single awful enemy for this entire challenge run, the Cryo Abyss Herald. Sandrone's Ice Beam does do occasional physical damage, but as a Claymore character, it was honestly more efficient to just use her standard attacks. This is probably the only other con for Sandrone. Her regular attacks hit so slowly. Not to mention, you have to be super close to the enemy to actually hit them, which makes it very easy to get sucker punched by these Abyss Heralds, which applies cryo to Sandrone and makes you even slower. Not my best moment if I'm being honest. But I imagine fighting with Sandrone is probably better than facing this guy with Lowen. I think I got midway through Inazuma with Lowen before I paused for this challenge, and honestly, I'm probably going to work on Albedo or Chiori before I work on another cryo character. Sorry, Lowen. Now that we're done in Sumeru, it's time to prepare for Sandrone's next ascension, which means it's time to go robot bug hunting.
3 weeks later. Many months later.
So much later that the old narrator got tired of waiting and they had to hire a new one.
I guess I can never have a truly perfect solo run experience. After way too much bug hunting, we're finally ready for the final ascension in this challenge. All that's left is reaching AR-40. I don't actually know if we even have enough experience yet to immediately hit AR-40 after the ascension domain, but I imagine we'll be pretty close. Okay, well we got just past AR-40, so I guess it's time to find some things to do. Luckily, I still had some resin left after farming Sandrone's boss and plenty of tasks in the Adventurer Handbook, so after all of that, I hopped on the Aquabus to the city to prepare for our next Archon quest, resulting in one of the most perfectly timed adventure rank increases in any of my challenges. Time to ascend Sandrone for the last time in this challenge and start the Fontaine Archon quest.
I don't know how she does it. That cat girl always seems to find the weakest spot in every machine and then, bleh, broken. I wish her brother would have a word with her. Never mind. I guess it's a talent, really. Maybe I should have her help me stress test my future creations. If my machines can't survive her curiosity, what chance do they have in battle?
Now, while I know this part of the Fontaine Archon quest has always been doable by non-Hydro characters, I usually skip it because, well, for the same reason I tend not to bother with the Ember Domain skip. Why would I waste my time when it's been shown time and time again by other creators and myself, sometimes, to be doable? However, I decided to take the extra time and make the extra effort to do the workaround successfully with Sandrone. It was on principle. You know, she's proven so many times that she can do almost everything in this challenge, so why should I take the easy way out now? That That said, this definitely took me longer than most of the fights against the Cryo Abyss mages. It was absolutely a learning curve. However, at least it, provides some Sandrone content during Act 1, because that's literally the last time we actually use her for something until the second half of Act 2. Starting Act 2, we decide that even Elaine's poster is not worth getting dragged into the event quest, especially considering Chiori Only has shown me the hard way how awful trying to navigate around these event quests can be. Thanks, Lantern, right? Anyways, Act 2 also finally brings us to one of our few domains for the entire nation of Fontaine. Oh, here's something fun to share. I recently started and finished the Amazing Digital Circus. I don't know if my community is huge with that or not. I mostly saw people talking about the finale, and I was like, well, I always like watching things that are finished, so might as well. I finished it in 2 nights. Oops. It was really good though, I liked it. I dipped my toes a little in the fandom aspect by enjoying some art people made, and immediately decided I will not be doing that again. I was rapidly reminded that fandom spaces are very different than they used to be, and life is so much happier without entering toxic spaces. The more you know. Also, I watched the first episode of Zombie Stage. 10 out of 10, very much looking forward to future episodes. Anyways, my favorite character in Digital Circus is Jax, and my second favorite is Pomni, which is super basic, I know, but whatever, leave me alone. Moving into Act 3 and the infamous jail arc, I at least feel some relief with the fact Sandrone makes navigating way more fun. We take our wins when we can get them. Not to mention,
Arlecchino is a woman of her word. She acts decisively, and you can trust her to get things done. Purely from a professional standpoint, it would be nice if all my colleagues could try to emulate her.
And yes, I am skipping over Act 4. Fun fact, I actually recorded the entirety of Fontaine Acts 2 through, well, Bedtime Story, in a single day. I was locked into FBI, what can I say? Act 5 brings us a domain that has been the downfall of countless solo runs prior. So, how did Sandrone do? Pretty good, actually. The first few floors are rarely an issue. Emphasis on rarely, because they still can be an issue sometimes. With floor 1 having a single hilly trail rogue and a trio of regular hilly trails that got in a combined, one single hit. A for effort, I guess. The second singular Hilichurl rogue somehow got more hits in despite being alone, but honestly, I'm going to blame the fact that I had been playing Genshin for like 12 hours by this point, and I was definitely losing my sanity, and gaining a whole lot of eye strain. But that's what we have tea for Sandrone, not for me. Though with how long the script is getting, yeah, I'm gonna need some tea too. The next room had a trio of Metachurls, as well as rocks falling from the sky, but somehow, despite not really moving around a lot, Sandrone didn't get hit by a single rock, and the Metachurls didn't put up a fight at all. Honestly, I was starting to worry that this was going to be a bad omen for the final floor. See, the final floor of this domain is where solo runs, and my sanity, tend to come to die. You combine 2 Hilichurl rogues with long-range attack, and a Ruin Guard in a small room, well, it's rarely a good time. Luckily though, we have Sandrone and Fagio, and despite it definitely being a little dicey at times, and spending way too much time trying to run away from the Ruin Guard's spitting attack, we survive to go fight the whale. First though, Sandrone has to watch her coworker open up a giant space void, because sure, and then it's up to us and the newly powerful Nouvelette to fix everything, and I don't know, maybe rescue Child? We'll see what happens. Did anyone else notice how Sandrone's signature weapon looks very similar to the guillotine used for Focalor? Well, I guess that's why her last name is... never mind. I've realized that I'd never actually mentioned what my plans are for Snezhnaya characters. In the past, I kind of jumped the gun with deciding what characters I'd want to solo run with, and ended up, well, not really doing a lot of the previewed characters. Plus, Alice was previewed as if she'd be playable, and we all know how that worked out. For now, I definitely want to do solo runs with Odette, Alosha, and Mitya. Maybe also Vodjanitsa. Other than that, I'd have to see what sort of characters the others are, and I'll also need to confirm if we can actually access the level up materials for said characters easily. I'm also very excited to get the Tsaritsa on Archons Only. I've finally kind of figured out my plan for that account going forward, and I'll be making a video on that account hopefully before 7.0 to discuss my plans. For now, I want to definitely speedrun recording the part 2s of my challenges, getting past solo runs done, and then being able to have free time to give Archons Only and Hexerai Only the love both accounts deserve. We have finally completed the Fontaine Archon quest, so it's time to return to Sumeru to start Bedtime Story. Sorry Sandrone, Dainsleif apparently has no interest in your homeland. Though, to be fair, neither does the Abyss, so wins and losses, I guess. Bedtime Story, while not particularly long, has 6 main enemies to fight, and some mushrooms, I guess. 2 Pyro Abyss mages, a Ruin Hunter, and 3 Cryo enemies. Whatever, at least it's not a Catalyst only. only. I say, as if I didn't ask if I should do Wriothesley only. Regardless, the 2 Cryo Abyss mages weren't too terrible, but the Cryo Abyss Herald, well, let's move on from that. With Bedtime Story wrapped up, it's time to make our way to Natlan. This was actually the first time I went to Natlan on this account, so before I got too far into the quest, I had to rescue the little guy, and it only felt right to name him Polonia. Rest in peace. After we get a tour from Gachina, there isn't anything but trial fights until the end of Act 1. The good news is at least Natlan still had a healthy balance between trial fights and your own team fights. Nodcry, take notes. Snezhnaya too, for that matter. Speaking of Nodcry and Snezhnaya, if there is an opportunity to do a quick start to Snezhnaya after Natlan, I'm heavily debating if I'll skip over Nodcry, at least while I can. It's kind of putting me between a rock and a hard place, so to speak, because Nodcry is almost 40 hours long. For reference, this entire challenge from Mondstadt through Natlan was 58 hours. So 40 additional hours, all for what, like maybe 10 minutes or less with a specific challenge video? I don't know. But if Snezhnaya is the same way, it wouldn't really make sense to skip Nodcry using the argument of, oh, it's mostly trials. You know, I guess I'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll be the true winner by doing my 2-part challenges. After helping save the people of the Springs, we start Act 2 by seeing yet another one of our coworkers. So here's a fun fact. Did you know that after you talk to the old man selling rocks, a Saurian spirit sconce appears to provide easy travel to the location we meet Vichama? Yeah, well, I realized during this challenge. Mind you, this is like the 7th time I've played through Natlan. Once we get Kachina's ancient name from Vichama, it's time to break her out of hell, or something like that. Okay, so leading up to this patch, I was entirely planning to pull for Seat Lolly whenever she reran from my Lowen team. I was not expecting her to run alongside Sandrone, or get a skin. I ended up winning the 50-50 for Sandrone, which was great, but I went into deep pity and lost to C7 D-Luke when trying for Seat Lolly. At least it meant I got Lowen to level 95, I guess. After that struggle fest, I went to Weapons Banner and figured I would have no issues. After all, I had a 75% chance of getting a weapon I wanted, right? Or something like that. I got my first ever Lost Prayer. Yep, I have 7 copies of Skyward Pride, and now a new Lost Prayer. Cool. I saw some people online saying if you end up getting a standard weapon and you want both weapons, you should cancel your guarantee path and go to the 50-50 again. I don't know if there is an actual science behind that, but I thought, okay, whatever. I canceled the path, essentially erasing my guarantee, and went for Seat Lolly's weapon, and I won my 50-50. For the literal first time probably ever, I was actually disappointed to win my 50-50, because now I have to face another 50-50 for Sandrone's weapon, and then I lost to Mizuki C1. Luckily, after a whole lot of grinding on the moon map, I finally got Sandrone's signature. For the record, I didn't check what pity looked like for any of those after that fact, and I probably won't go looking anytime soon. Better to not know. Wrapping up Act 2, Act 3 essentially means following around Sandrone's banner partner and future aquarium front desk manager.
That great shaman seems nice. Is she really very old? Still seems like she's got plenty of energy to me. Though she does get a little too worked up sometimes. What do I mean? Oh, well, recently I was talking to her about you and me going underwater to look for something. And before that, I told her you were in Nodcry helping Columbina get her name back. She got so animated her face turned bright red. I wonder if it has something to do with her age.
After beating up the Fatui agents, fake rescuing Auroron, a trial fight, and whatever the story time with Chaska and Koichi was, we finished Act 3, meaning it's nearly time for the big monster of the Archon questline. Starting Act 4, before we go to war, we have to track down our coworker. Luckily, he wasn't exactly difficult to find, though the Cryo Fatui was annoying, per usual. But that means now it's time for the war, which means more yapping, obviously. Going back to my wallet struggles for this half of the patch over on my main account, after finally having Sandrone, Seat Lolly, and both signature weapons, I had to move over to Chronicled Wish. You see, I have Yaimiko, and by the time you see this video, I'll have C1 from the free Stella Fortuna. But her signature weapon also gives a further boost to Stellar Conduct, so I figured it can't hurt, right? I charted my path for Yaimiko's weapon and started using every wish I got from Battle Pass, Welkin, and Exploration. Thank you, Columbina, and the moon. I also already had some pity built up on Chronicled Wish from last time, so I figured I was good. I'd lost my 50-50 in Mizuki's weapon. Mind you, I already have Mizuki's weapon. I pulled it when she first ran, because I knew she was going to become standard, but I also knew that standard character weapons are pretty much impossible to get. Anyways, I did eventually get Yaimiko's weapon, and as a reward, I also got myself Seat Lolly's skin, telling myself it's fine because I won't be pulling it all in the second half of this patch. I haven't mentioned it yet, but Sandrone is honestly incredible against the the abyssal pylons. Usually, characters that aren't catalysts are kind of a nightmare because their elemental attacks are trapped behind a cooldown. I'm looking at you, Dahlia. But Sandrone makes this entire segment an absolute breeze. I don't know why though, but despite doing everything quickly, we had a higher death count than I've had in past solo runs, which was a little surprising. Well, it definitely could have been worse, and you'll see that in future runs. With Act 4 complete, it's time to go help out the Flower Feather clan during the interlude.
Everyone knows Il Capitano doesn't like to remove his mask. But it doesn't stop him from finishing his tea whenever we get together.
The idea of the captain removing his mask and showing off his rotting flesh so he can drink some tea is kind of hilarious, I'm not gonna lie. Moving into Act 5, we have our final battles against the Abyss. The majority of fights in this quest is either Trial Moeka, or, well, the Traveler and Trial Moeka, so there's not really much point to showing it in solo runs, but at least we do get a few brief fights with Sandrone. And even better, all of the enemies are abyssal mimics, so Sandrone further proves her GOAT status by making light work of them. Traveler and Trial Moeka were not as lucky.
Light work, no reaction.
Light work, no reaction. Ooh. Okay, it's got a little kick.
Maybe one day I'll get good at this fight, but let's be real, probably not. After we awkwardly stand around while we watch our coworker aura farm for 2 minutes and then die, well, sort of anyways, we wrap up Act 5, meaning all that's left is a space and time for you. The first section of fights is entirely Electro and Hydro enemies, and while that made me want to rip my eyelids off during, well, nearly every previous solo run to date, it was beautiful and so refreshing with Sandrone. The game gives you Trial Sleet Lolly, so obviously they want you to use Cryo here, and, well, who am I to refuse requests of Hoyoverse? With this final segment of a space and time for you, it's time for our solo challenge final thoughts. Like I've said, Sandrone is my 7th time going through Natlan, 6th if we exclude my main account and only count solo runs. Overall, she has without a doubt been the best experience of them all. Sandrone might be the closest we'll ever come to a perfect solo run character. I only decided to do Sandrone because I've done solo runs for almost all the other playable Harbingers. Sorry child, one day I promise. But it was just so insanely fun and enjoyable that I had to finish it. You might be thinking, oh, well Moeka must be the best solo run character then because minus the Electro Monuments in Inazuma, Pyro is the only thing Sandrone is missing from doing everything. And yeah, I'd say Sandrone and Moeka are probably nearly tied. If anything, Sandrone might sneak ahead. Let me explain. Excluding Amber's domain in Mondstadt Act 1, since that's skippable for anyone above, well, my level of skill, there are 2 parts of the Archon quest that require Pyro, Liyue Act 2 and Caribert. Additionally, characters need to be able to fly or get decently high in the air to glide over to the platform in Liyue Act 3. Moeka does fit all of those, but where Sandrone gains points is her element. Pyro and Hydro are the 2 most common enemy element types in the entire Archon quest, by a significant margin. I have not personally counted it, but just from how many times I've played through, you can take my word on it. The boost Pyro characters gain in early game with the mechanics is completely erased when it comes to the sheer amount of Pyro enemies faced throughout. Case in point, Arlecchino. Cryo, however, annihilates Hydro enemies and reverse melts the Pyro enemies. Additionally, Sandrone's stellar conduct dishes significant damage when Electro characters are involved. Her movement abilities also are not impacted by being outside of Natlan, which loses points on principle for me, along with every Natlan character. Best of all though, Sandrone could do the archery demonstration. That alone makes her worthy of the crown. Off the top of my head, I can't really think of any other playable characters who might be better than Sandrone for a solo run. Maybe Varka because he can swirl Pyro and launch himself, but he kind of needs other teammates to be effective, right? Same with Chaska. And Varka doesn't have any sort of movement mechanics besides being the tallest character and his leapfrog jumping. I don't know, I'll try next time he runs. But Moeka was really the only one I could think of that even stood a chance at being solo run champion. I know a few people have done Moeka only, but I haven't actually watched those. I am speaking directly on what I know about Moeka. Overall, Sandrone was incredibly refreshing, and honestly, if I could replay this entire challenge over again, I would. 11 out of 10. Sandrone adds to her plethora of accomplishments by beating all of the Abyss enemies and the Hayden without any assist from Dainsleif, and more impressively, without dying. Meaning, yes, the falling death in Sumeru was the single death in the entire challenge run. How humbling. With this, we've completed a space and time for you, marking the end of Sandrone only. If you made it this far, comment, a robot emoji? That would probably be more fitting for Anefa only, but it's fine for now. As always, a special shout out to my channel members, and if you're new here, be sure to like and subscribe as well as hit the little bell so you never miss an upload. Until next time!